Right, welcome everybody. The Kinross-shire Committee on the 21st November. I think what we'll do is start by going briefly around the table, just explaining who we are just briefly so that everybody knows. There's a few new faces here. So if we start with you, Ian.
Thanks, Neil Freshwater, Ward 8 Councillor.
Sean Panton, Team Leader for Major Applications and Enforcement.
Steve McDonald, Economic Development Manager for Tourism, Culture and Place at Birmingham Council.
Francis Gilliesby, Chair of Police from Blair Adam.
Sarah Bruce-Jones, Secretary for Fossaway and District Community Council.
Hi, Lee Axton, Community Planning Team Leader at Perth and Kinross Council and Lead Officer from this committee.
Dave Cuthbert, Councillor, and your cheerleader tonight.
Richard Waters, Local Councillor and Vice Convener for this committee.
Willie Robertson, another Ward 8 Councillor. Neil Bingham, Chair of Ballinasloe Community Council.
Bruce Mark Webford, Community Council.
Bill Freeling, Kinross Community Council, soon to be Chair.
Excellent, thank you. We'll start with apologies. I think we're only missing Mike, which was Andy Miller. I don't know if he's online or not. He said he would try to make some minute online. So if he can record his apologies, and if he turns up, note he's arrived. Okay, the next thing is declarations of interest. Does anybody have any declarations of interest? No? Okay, excellent. We'll move on to the minute of the meeting, the last meeting on the 15th of August. Are we all happy with the minute? We're content to adopt it? Yep, okay.
Just one quick thing in that, the travel plan. There was another bit needed added to take the physical storage of that to travel plan at Glenfire tunnels. I think we've added the travel through the tunnels, but there was another part which was to take the bicycle storage that was in that the travel plan off. Yeah, we don't need bike storage next to the.
I think it was to go to Arngast Village Hall. Was that right? I think that's what they said at the time.
There was cycle storage put into Arngast Village Hall. I think there was some confusion when the consultants when they came along that there should be cycle storage in the tunnels.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Are you happy with that, Kirsten? Did you get what was being said?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So we'll move on to the outstanding business statement. So, first item is the planning and enforcement session that was arranged, I believe. Do you want to comment on that, John, at all?
Yes, so I actually, hands up, I wasn't prepared for an update on that tonight. I was only prepared for the wind farm update. So in terms of the planning enforcement update, what are you referring to for public or?
It was for the community councils and I think public were invited as well. I believe it was quite a good turnout.
Yeah.
A month ago.
Yeah. That was a session at 2 High Street, which was quite well attended actually. Quite a lot of community councils were there. So I think one of the big things that came out of that was about community councils and what the content of their representation should be when objecting to an application. That was one of the big things that came out of it, because some community councils felt that they were often getting told that isn't a material consideration or that's not relevant to this application. So a lot of community councils were looking on a better steer on how to do an objection. So what we've done is we've offered, if anybody in a community council does need any help when that application comes in, just to email us at developmentmanagement@pkc.gov.uk, and then the case officer or the relevant team leader can get in touch with you. And that way we can make sure that your representation is focused to the planning issues and you can still get across the point that you're trying to make. So that was the biggest takeaway from that event. But like I say, I wasn't prepared to give that update tonight, so that was winging it, so to speak.
That was wonderful. I'll do that more often. I'll not prepare you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, in all seriousness, the main thing was if anyone in a community council does feel they need help with an objection, then we're willing to offer assistance on that.
Any questions on that? No. Okay, the next item is marked as complete. Community Transport Forum. I've arranged a meeting for the 19th of December at 5 p.m. We've got Drew coming, Margaret Roy. Margaret's talking about widening out to include Fife in the discussion, so we can talk to them as well. I think there are other people interested in attending. But what I was going to ask, my feeling is this came from Richard. His suggestion was we widen it out to active travel generally, rather than purely about buses, because as we're going along, we're slowly sorting the buses with Drew's wonderful services. So it's things like the trishaws might be interested coming along, the cycle clubs and so on. So making it a wider thing than just community transport. So the chief would be in favour of that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So
I have to say that if it gets too spread out, it means we can't really concentrate on what we're trying to do as in the forum. Because I've attended forum meetings before and they go on and on and on, even just on the one topic. So that was my only fear.
okay.
But I mean, I'm quite happy if you want to include these things, and perhaps we can try and prioritise what the forum specialises in,
Well, we can certainly
rather than being too expansive.
we can try it once and see what happens.
Yeah.
If it does develop into a talking session.
No, but it's important we discuss these things, but and it's the.
Yeah.
I think we have to prioritise how much where we spend our time. That's my point.
Neil, do you want to come in?
I think I would just second Willie's. I think they're all important issues, but I would agree that you can get dilution if you start doing too much on it, you know. So yeah, I'd probably second Willie's position on that one.
Okay. So we'll try it this time and see how it goes, and then think again. But the details are, it'll be here at the same place, and we'll be doing it by teams, 19th December at 5 PM. So it'll be an open meeting. Anybody can turn up. So you won't have to sit over there. You can join the table. Okay, the next two items are marked as complete. What I was going to say is where they're complete, I'm suggesting we take them off the list and move them down to a secondary list to show what we've actually completed. Are we all happy with that? Yeah. Okay. Did you want to speak to the agenda note? Briefly, the 50,000.
Yeah, it was purely just to remind the committee that they have a budget of £40,000 for this financial year, plus an understand £10,000 from last financial year, and that's within the gift of the committee to determine what they wish to do with it. And I would just remind committee that they have this evening's meeting and one meeting I think scheduled for February before the end of this financial year.
Yeah.
Can I come in just with a suggestion for discussion? We've done the active travel plan, and I know everybody's aware of it, and we've kind of signed on it now. You know, there's numerous elements to it, but one of the top priorities on it was a mapping app or a mapping thing. I had asked officers to go and have a look and see where you know, trying to get a rough idea of what the costs is and how we could do it. I think there would need to be a lot of work to get to it, but the general gist was that the official procedure and kind of developing something like that is you do, the first stage you do is a discovery phase works where there's a lot of consultation to see what you're actually trying to deliver as part of the app. And I think there would still need to be a lot of discussions. Sitting with the tracks as one of the main people with it all, but also over the whole Kinross-shire. And it was just to ask the committee if it's worth allocating that money, because I think it would be good to have it allocated within this budget year to show we're using it. I have no figures to what it would cost to do something like that, and I suppose it's what the spec says you want to do. So there may be need, I think, to go and get external funding elsewhere. I think there would be quite, you know, given we've already done the active travel master plan and it's kind of shown as the top priority for actions within that, it would be a good thing to at least start going round that if we as a committee earmark that funds, that's where it's going for. And then we can start, you know, and I do think that's the absolute core to talks to potentially delivering this. And there's also, we've been having chats through Fossaway with Donald from Dollar on some paper mapping type things that they're going to do as well. And it would be good to have an open discussion and how we take this forward. And if we earmark that fund, you know, whether this discovery phase is the way to do, or it's more a kind of community-led, tracks-led thing, and get the money for them to deliver it, or we go through the more official council route, I don't know. And it would be good to see something in the master plan start to get delivered. And I think the beauty of that is everyone across the whole Kinross-shire would benefit from it.
Okay, so do you understand what's being asked for? I mean, are we in favour of what's being proposed?
Now, the first question comes to mind is there we're not reinventing the wheel here, are we? So it has been done elsewhere,
yeah.
I'd have thought. So if we can get examples where it's actually been done, we did it, and what it looks like, perhaps we can use that as a sort of template. We've actually got Nick Mainprice, who's a project officer in Tracks. Nick, have you got any experience of any of this?
No, I haven't really. And you're right, it would be good to see examples from elsewhere. I mean, it can be quite intensive in terms of staff and labour resource to pull all of this together. Essentially, you want somebody with good GIS skills to try and capture it all, and maybe, as it was alluding to, maybe sort of a paper, sort of desk-based type or table-based sort of exercise with community members might be a good way to start it, and then translate it into GIS database.
But based on what you've said then, Richard, and what Nick's just said, would it be possible to get a report to this thing?
I think we can
with an idea of what the likely cost would be and giving us a way forward.
Okay. I mean, I think what we should be doing then is,
I think part of the point is in budget cycle to make sure the money earmarked to ASAP.
We could actually earmark it just now,
yeah.
But then
we're not absolutely committed.
No, exactly. I'm quite happy about earmarking the money, but I think it'd be quite good if we all knew what we're signing up.
Yeah, we've got to go down. There's a process to be done. There's got to be diligence done in preparing for it, and that's what we're doing that with the main stakeholders within the area. Part of that.
We have expertise locally. I've got a friend who worked for Ordnance Survey, and he's an absolute expert at mapping. Dave Quittingham is, and Dave's always sending me ideas and stuff. So, like, he's the sort of person I'm sure he'd be quite keen, and he's retired, to come on board to support something like that.
I think that, sorry.
So, at Fossway, what we've done, we acquired Parish Online to help us do our local place plan and our community action plan. And what we're putting onto that mapping is all the footpaths in Fossway, which is extending through from the project with Dollar Active. So we've got people in Fossway who are not the core paths, but identifying those routes that we all know about, but no one's written them down. So, for example, you're standing in the gorge, where do you go? So putting that together.
Dollar Donald from Dollar Active is I chatted to Dave about the forum, and he's quite happy to come and give a short presentation of what they're doing in Dollar, because there is a local interest from certainly from the west of Kinross-shire as well. So that would give a bit of context to it all as well. So
South Queensferry has a fairly impressive walking, cycling, whatever mapping system with branding around their walks and things like that, and it's fairly easy to use. And there's also big posters up in when you go down to South Queensferry. So that's quite a good example of bringing it all together.
Okay, so what we're looking for then is a paper to come to the next committee outlining what we're doing. I see Andy Clegg's online. I don't know if he wanted to say anything about this. He's typing at the moment. Did you want to say anything, Andy?
Yeah, thanks, convener. I mean, we do have a mapping system for our sort of countryside path network. It's called CAMS, Countryside Access Mapping, I think it is. So whether that would be appropriate, I mean, we log all our sort of signs and, obviously the route of the path, whether it would collect all the information you're after for other active travel formats, I don't know, but certainly it's something we could look at and maybe you know, if you're doing some sort of you know, more detailed session on it, we could get somebody along to show you what's on it and how it works.
Yeah, so would you be able to produce a report and send someone down to the next meeting? We're just checking the date of it. I think it's in January. I'm not sure.
Yeah, we could certainly look at that. Yeah.
Okay, so I think there seems to be a consensus that we go with this. Are we happy that we commit 50,000 or whatever it takes to do this? So we've actually locked it away to some extent, and Andy produces a report. I'm happy with that.
I think it's partly Andy. It would be cross team, I think, as well, because it would be Neil Moran as well. I think we've lost Elliot now, but I don't know if there's replacement for him come in yet. But it would be, you know, quite a few teams.
Yes, convener, I could have a chat with Neil and see what between us what sort of systems we've got for mapping routes.
Okay,
and
that's great.
See, give you an update, whether it's a report or a verbal update at the next meeting. I'll discuss that with him.
Okay, it's the 20th of February, so if you can get
okay.
the date in the diary in. I think Willie wanted to come in.
Would this be Kinross-shire specific?
Yes.
Yes.
So if it works, we could actually use it in other parts of Perth and Kinross.
Indeed. Yes. So we can use the money to.
Yeah, had this as a discussion. Or a discussion with him about this.
So it'd be quite, if it works, it's really valuable for other parts of Perth and Kinross.
I think so.
Good.
Yeah.
Kinross-shire and Glenfarg.
Right.
Kinross-shire and Glenfarg.
No, absolutely.
Let's try.
I'm treating it into your party. I'll show. I know you're not.
I can just about.
Okay, so we have to move on then.
Yep.
Okay, so the next thing we've got is the Blaringon Primary School, and we've got Nicola Marchand and
Marion Annis.
Marion Annis.
Hi.
Are you going to do a presentation, or if you come up, stand next to
No,
me?
we'll just.
That's it.
We just got a bunch of stand. We're just going to give you a verbal update, really, where we're at. So I'm going to tell you what we've already, brief summary of what you already know, basically, just that we're all at the same starting point. So it's been a long, slow burn, this, to start a community asset transfer of the former Blaringon Primary School, plus the attached schoolhouse and car park and grounds to the Fossaway Community Development Trust. They eventually, we did a community survey in Blaringon in specific, and we've done a broader one as part of our community action plan. Top priority in our community action plan is to make more use of our local facilities and to increase our local assets, cafes, shops, pubs, village halls. Blaringon themselves strongly wanted to retain it. The issue was, how can we, because it's quite a large facility, the house itself is 5 bedrooms. So it's like a TARDIS, as Marion will tell you. Yeah. And so our biggest thing is, how can we recommend to the trust, Marion's the director, I'm the secretary, that the model that we're proposing will be financially sustainable. The majority of our village halls in the Fossaway district are struggling to make ends meet. So they're relying on grant incomes, probably like most of your village halls, to cover the costs, with utility costs going up, repair costs going up. So we can't recommend to the trust, go for the asset transfer if we do not believe ourselves. So I'm kind of hand to Barry to where we're doing with that bit of the project.
Well, I suppose that's why we were attracted to the project, is because it did have the house. Unfortunately, the house is in a much worse state of repair, and they've only had the valuation from the council, from you, in end of July. So there's still a bit of confusion about quite how much you want for it. So we've been reading through. Anyway, we decided as to the way forward, because we needed to get the business plan and feasibility studies done as part of the CAP transfer. We had to go and find the money. This has been the problem, to get a professional job done. So the SLF, a Scottish Land Fund, was where we went to for the money. And we applied to their stage 1 funding, which I think you know, and we were fortunate to get funding for them and from the Vacant Properties Fund to fund consultants who've been in and have engaged with the community. They've produced options, which we talked about last night at our trust. There were 4 options as to whether we don't buy it at all, buy it buy one bit and not the other, or lease it, or buy the whole. So those are the 4 options. The Blaringon subgroup, which we've set up, which would be like the Hall Committee, would like to carry on with the option to buy. So we took that to the trust yesterday, and they've said that we will continue with that. Again, we're not quite sure whether it's 170 for the whole site or whether it's £75,000 for the house and £1 for the school. You know, that's still something that we'd like some clarification on. And Scottish Land Fund will want that because they how much they offer depends on the conditions that you put on the buildings. So that's where we're at. We're going to proceed with that, and the consultants will be asked to prepare a business plan and all the financial, stuff that they're supposed to do. They've done the options appraisal, doing the feasibility study, business plan, architectural assessments, options and sketches and architectural drawings for chosen option, and the quantity surveyor fees. So that's what the money's for stage 1. So to go to stage 2, we will need to have we will have to fund an independent valuation. That's what they require, as well as quite a lot of a robust business plan and, you know, all these studies, and whether we can do it and got the skills, got the people that are involved to run it. Yeah, it's a huge process.
Very large undertaking because it's more than the hall.
Yeah.
The idea is the house will bring the income in to fund the use of the hall by the community. So we have explored a very diverse set of options, looking from respite care, using the house as respite care. That's a bigger build cost because of the requirements you have for it, all the way through to thinking outside the box of it not being a house. So doing it a bit like the courthouse model that you have in Kinross now, with offices to let, with a central cafe sort of hub on the read and relax concept that's just opened in Kinross. We've spoken to them. I've walked the high street talking to estate agents and saying what's needed in a locality. So they say they have people coming to ask for offices to let. So that's quite an interesting concept for us, all the way through to thinking about a small sort of Loch Leven larder concept where local producers bring their stuff to sell, because about a mile down the road in the near future, there will be 124 holiday lodges. And that's walking distance, and it's on the bus that Drew's. And so you could easily pull into the school because it's got the car park to drop people off. So having to but what the consultants are saying to us, you need to actually find organisations that are interested in saying, at least to actually claim a note of interest, and that's a lot of legwork for us.
Yeah, we've got a young couple that I used to teach with at Perth High, who have been on a world trip looking at forest schools, and they're very interested in opening a forest school, come nursery, possible after, holiday club and after school club. I mean, that would be that would be where my heart would be for the school building. If we could have a regular income, like we could build a business plan around that. The house, we've just had to think wider than it being a house, because Scottish Land Fund won't give us the money for a holiday let. That isn't, they're not interested in that. Whether we can go down affordable housing in the countryside route, it's a different fund. So we're sort of looking far and wide, and any idea. We've got lots of ideas. It's finding now we need to have something. A business plan is just a plan, but we do want something that we can seem semi-concrete that we can build around.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, well done. You're putting a huge effort in. It's not easy.
It's not
easy.
Huge learning curve for us. It wasn't anything we'd done before.
And it's a great big money pit. It's a 19th century lovely cottage, but since it hasn't been lived in since 2004, is it? Yes, 2014. The old lady died, and nothing hasn't been maintained at all. Whereas the school is in a reasonable condition, despite the kitchen being ripped out. and the toilets are in a terrible state because everything's been turned off.
So it's a bit topsy-turvy because obviously the bit that's in the poor condition is the income generator.
Yeah.
But the bit that's more usable won't generate an income to cover the costs.
Okay, but you're seeking clarity on the private houses looking for. I don't know if anyone here knows what that might be.
I'm just looking at the report now, and there was a long delay in getting this report.
Yes, we know, but in fact,
Very
it's different to the earlier report
Yes.
that
Yes.
I plowed through.
Looking at a multitude of different figures, actually pieced with the person that gave me the confirmation one way or the other.
Yeah.
But the way that the asset transfer process works, the onus is on you to see what price you're prepared to pay for it. Not what price is the council. If you want to offer £1 and offer £1, you're legally entitled to do so.
So our issue is that we can only offer you the £1 because the cost is more actually having the structure around it, which means there's no conditions of use. And otherwise we won't get funding for renovations and everything else if there's a condition of use. So we understood from yourselves that we would only have the £1 offer would be acceptable if you had conditions in the clause that say it could only be used for the community. But see, community benefit, as the trust is a community organisation, I would be prepared to argue with you that bringing that income into the community allows to fund the community projects from our community action plan, and hence it is community benefit. So I think as we sort of start.
I think you're in a conversation with
Yes.
from our legal team in the room as well.
Absolutely. But I'm
Well, I have had a meeting with the chap who commissioned the report, and which seemed to be that it's £250,000 for the whole site to be open market. That's what they'll put it on the open market for. We can have it for 170,000. But there's also this thing about £1 for the school, and then the schoolhouse is valued in the current state at 75,000. But if it was done up, it would be 170,000. And you assured me that they wouldn't be doing it up. So is it £75,001 or is it 170,000? Because we'll need to know because of what we asked the SLF for the funding, you see, so, and the conditions.
Yeah.
But if it's CAT transfer, it will have to be, we need to know what conditions will be put on for that.
Yeah.
So it still feels muddy. It still feels quite muddy at the moment. And
so we need to get you some clarification.
Yes,
Are you able to do that now, or do you want to come back on that too?
I can't offer that clarification. As I'm looking at this, asset transfer was something I was involved in until the end of last year, but the figures here are not overly clear. Probably why you're.
This is not us. Sorry, we were considering that we needed to go away and learn something else.
Okay, so we'll go away, or Lee will go away.
Clarification. Yeah.
Can I just ask officers, what are our powers? Because my understanding is this committee has powers over capital asset transfers. Is that right?
No.
Does it have to go back to
property finance and resources?
Okay. Right.
A decision. Yeah, so this property subcommittee.
do we have to buy it through CAT?
No.
Right, so we could buy it as a trust.
You could just go through an open negotiation if you wished. Yes. The
Right.
strength of asset transfer is there's a presumption that the council will accept your offer unless there are reasonable grounds for refusal, and you can ask for a discount based on the community benefit that you think it will generate. Whereas it's an open market negotiation, and you don't have that kind of legislation behind you.
Our challenge was the paperwork that we were advised we would have to go through to demonstrate community benefit. It seemed an awful big exercise for us. And if you could come up with a simple way of us doing that.
Who told you it would be lots of paper?
Somewhere in
What the community asset transfer?
Community benefit demonstration.
Well, isn't that part of, I was led to believe that it was part, when they do the CAT transfer, they score.
Yes, exactly that.
Which I have actually done. We put that in last summer.
Yeah.
It's the business plan.
Yes.
That's where we've stumbled, and that's when we've had to go and find the money.
Without going down a massive rabbit hole here, the community benefit bit is within your gift, to use in your own words, to demonstrate how you feel your project justifies it, whatever level of discount you want to apply. If you can put a figure on it, brilliant. If you can't, it's very difficult to do so when you're kind of doing that.
That was our problem.
Well, that's
Then you can only do what you can do, and the council has
Right.
to take a bit of a risk there sometimes as well.
Fine. So our community action plan, which is the projects that we'd want to use the income for, which is now the voice of the community, we had a 36% return rate. That can be used to demonstrate benefit because we're going to use the income to fund the projects that the community have voted on.
Yeah, I mean, it's all community benefit
Yeah.
minded. That's
That
why we
helps
want
us.
it. Yes, it's the house is the income source for
Yeah.
the community benefit.
That helps us.
Okay, so I mean, if you want, you can come back later on once you've decided what you're doing. But does anyone else have any questions?
Anybody got any ideas of how we could do an income generation in a building? Shout, please, or let us know, because we're really interested in exploring
I think
very widely.
There might be, sorry,
Yeah. Oh, it's go on.
sorry, a very good example to look at is Huntley Development Trust.
Which,
Huntley Development Trust up in
Right.
Aberdeenshire. They've had a lot of experience of this.
right,
Their most recent project was they actually managed to acquire some land and stick up a couple of wind turbines, which generates an income that pays for a whole host. I'm not suggesting that would.
sorry, that would be a bit contentious.
Given the future conversation on the, but
Not sure I'm going down
it's
that
one of
road.
the options that can be considered is renewable energy.
Yes, we had thought about EV chargers, solar panels, and to try and we're going to, that is one of the things for all of our halls.
But in order to get there, you need to know what you're going to do. So
I know.
my recommendation would be to try and get Ashley Peace, Carl McLeod from legal, Sarah, who you'll know from
Yeah, that's who we've already met with.
CLE side, and your representative from Scottish Land Fund in a room,
Yeah,
because there should be a way around it. It shouldn't be that.
fine. Brilliant. That helps us.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank
Can I just say, it's I think the fact you've got the building beside the school, the old
Yeah.
schoolhouse, actually does make the thing stack up.
Yeah,
I know it's in a very poor state,
yeah,
but it does, if you can get that into actually generate a monthly income,
yeah,
whether you manage to get it sorted up or and rent it out to
Yeah.
a family, that guarantees the long-term future of the hall.
Well, that's what we're looking at.
And
That's what we want.
it's actually, it's difficult just now, but that's actually a great bonus, I think.
yeah. The renting it out to a family is the issue with some of the funders. The using it as a business, different business opportunities opens more funds for us to get the money. Because to be honest, the money to purchase it is not our issue. That'll come from SLF4. Two, the renovation costs, which are about 170,000 to bring it up to some kind of a standard to be usable space, is where we're going to have a strong case to get a return on investment.
Do you want to come in on this?
Well, I was thinking about coming in, but I'm coming now. That's absolutely fine. No, just thinking in terms of how you get that business support. I don't know if you
Yeah.
kind of accessed any of that. It's probably not Business Gateway, but I'm thinking GrowBiz potentially might be able
I've
to help.
spoken to GrowBiz,
Right,
yeah.
okay, right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I went to the Kinross-shire networking,
Right,
read all the
okay.
businesses. I'd say we're walking the streets literally
Yeah.
as to try, but the forest school, we reckon might give us enough base income. And if we can open a cafe and partner with somebody to do that,
Yeah.
that might give us enough base income to then to start thinking, is it small retail units in there or is it offices? But we just need a base first
Yeah, because
to
it
build
could be I mean, the house could be part of a nursery.
Yeah.
With rooms that if,
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
potential, there's a huge potential.
Yeah.
That's why.
Everybody
we,
tells us what they'd like to do, that the school want, all the parents want after school care.
But
the
it's
bus
finding
meeting,
people
but it's
to run it.
finding, yeah, we just need to have a partner in who's going to manage it, because that isn't what we've got the resources to do as a community.
It's a bit strange that Glenfarg's having the same sort of questions around the schoolhouse and the village hall and how to get an income generation stream. And we're discussing things like making it into a village hub, which is a transport hub as well as a social hub. And that opens up avenues of funding as well. And so it's a shame that there isn't a strategic view as to each community should have that sort of thing established that we can all piggyback on each other's experience.
That's a really good idea, because all of our village halls, it's in the public domain now. The Pamela Hall, Mowbray Village Hall, that is hit crisis point as well.
Yeah.
The WI manage it at the moment, and they can no longer do that. It's a Cat3 listed building. So unless we have somebody step up within the village to look at, we don't know what we're going to do with that one. And that was gifted to the community in 1908. So, all of our village halls are at different levels of being able to commercialise and bring an income in. And we as a trust are trying to get our halls to work together, because sometimes it's easier to go for a bigger grant, like the SSEN, to get solar panels and everything. We can't on the Cat3 listed building, but anyway, the other stuff. But it's a lot of work. And that's where I don't know about yourselves, but a lot of our hall associations are now beginning to struggle because now it's stepping it up to the level of income they're going to have to generate. So that's why, for us, the community bus, having our own bus to take people from our Carnbo village to the dance at our Crooked Devon village.
Yeah, absolutely. It all links in.
It all links in.
Yeah, in the future.
Yeah, and that came out of our community action plan. Really, really strong message. Like yourselves, where you've got lots of little settlements, getting it together, getting it financially viable.
Yep.
It's a huge challenge.
Okay, well, and it's even simple things like having the bus stop outside, rather than driving the bus in, having a bus stop right outside so you can drop people at the door. That sort of conversation is probably quite useful.
Absolutely.
Do with that the transport.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Can I just ask also conditions of sort of future uses? So if it started off as one thing, but then it became, if we wanted it to be an affordable house in the community, I'd just be interested to know what time scales and conditions you have once you've bought it.
From memory, at the council, it's only gone through this once with the former outdoor centre at Ryan.
Yeah.
It's a handful of years.
Right.
I can't remember the exact figure, between 5 and 10 years.
Yeah, so,
But it's all open for negotiation.
Fine.
Yeah, because
Effectively, it's to try and stop you selling it for private housing 2 years down the line.
No, we would only have to sell it if it was no longer financially viable.
Okay, well, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll move on. The next item is wind farm developments, and Rich is going to take this.
Yeah, that's one I was prepared to speak about. Yeah, so I thought I'd come along today to discuss the two big wind farm applications that are nearby.
It was just Sean's lead head of major applications for planning within Kinross County, which includes enforcement.
Unfortunately, yes.
You know, line up this week.
Yeah, you can pass them afterwards.
So the two big wind farms, obviously, we've got Craighead and Brunhill just now. So I thought it'd be helpful, first of all, to just talk about the process, about how we deal with those applications, and then secondly, where we are with those applications. So in terms of the process, for a wind farm, if it generates more than 50 megawatts, regardless of the height of the turbine, how many there are, if there's more than 50 megawatts, it's the Scottish Government Energy Consent Unit that deal with the application, and we refer to them as the ECU. And Perth and Kinross Council then just become a consultee to that application. We're not the determining authority. If it's less than 50 megawatts, again, regardless of number of turbines and heights, etc., if it's less than 50 megawatts, it's Perth and Kinross Council that are the determining authority. So right now for here, we have two applications of interest, Craighead, Brunhill, one of which is with Perth and Kinross Council for consideration, and one of which is with the ECU. So it's a bit awkward that we've got two at the same time, two different determining authorities, but we can't control when people submit applications to us. That's what we've got. So in terms of the one that's with the Energy Consent Unit, the application is currently for 18 wind turbines. And as you all know, that's been met with quite significant opposition from the local community councils, and further beyond. Now, hot off the press, we had a meeting with the Energy Consent Unit and the applicant just last week, and both Perth and Kinross Council and the Energy Consent Units raised concerns primarily with the scale of the development and associated landscape and visual impacts that come along with that. So we've spoken to the applicant, and the applicant is now going to reduce the scheme from 18 wind turbines to 13. Now, whether that's 13 turbines of the same size, we don't know. Whether they're relocating them, we don't know. But the applicant is currently back to the drawing board, and they've indicated that the revised scheme will be with the ECU round about March time. Now, when that goes back to the ECU will have to do a reconsultation, because obviously what you've all been consulted on will not be what's now available. So when they do this amended scheme, it'll then be re-notified. You'll all be able to put comments in again. You might just keep your existing comments. You might say we have nothing further to add, but you will be entitled to comment on it again because it is a new scheme. So basically that one is essentially on hold from our perspective just now. There's no point in Perth and Kinross Council coming up to our consultation response when we know the scheme is going to change. So we are now awaiting the fresh proposals, which is likely to be March. So before I go on to the Craighead one, has anyone got any questions or comments on that?
I get it.
Yeah.
Orchestra.
Councillor Watt?
I assume reducing to 13 at the state what the, there's no, so that drops below the 50.
It will drop below the 50 megawatts.
Definitely will be.
Yeah, it'll still be an ECU application.
Even if they reduce the size of the turbine,
Yes.
is that a possibility?
Yeah, they want,
If the turbines reduce as well, the number.
yeah, they are,
might drop below 50, but
so we posed that question to them, will this new scheme you're coming up with be less than 50 megawatts? And they've said no, it will still be over 50 megawatts. So that suggests it's still going to be large turbines, circa 200 meters. But I can't confirm that. We'll have to wait and see what they submit. But one good step forward is that is a reduction of 5 wind turbines. But like I say, Perth and Kinross Council will only be a consultee on that. So in terms of how Perth and Kinross Council come to their response, obviously, once we get this new scheme in, we'll look at it, consider it in line with national policy and local policy, and we'll obviously look at what's come in representation wise, and then we will then present to our planning and placemaking committee a recommendation of whether we go back to the ECU and we have no objection to this application subject to XYZ condition, or whether we go back to the ECU and say we object as a council. Now, if we object to that application, that does not mean the application gets refused. We're only a consultee and the ECU will consider that. However, if the council objects, that does trigger a public inquiry. So at that point, the ECU would manage that process and would invite along Perth and Kinross Council to summarise why we've objected to the application, and then thereafter the ECU will make the decision. Whatever the decision is, Perth and Kinross Council have to abide by that and any conditions that are imposed. But the whole, if that's coming into us about March time, by the time it's reopened for consultation, it's likely to be summertime before we are presenting to the Planning and Placemaking Committee what our recommendation is. So it's not going to be soon. But I suppose from an objector's point of view, you could be happy with that because it means it's further further down the line if it were to happen. But yeah, that's the latest. It's going to be reduced from 18 to 13.
Can I? That's really been very helpful, Sean, to get there. Can I ask you about one of the people who wrote to me about it were concerned about the impact it would have on the gliding centre at Port Moke. Was that a valid?
Yes, that is valid. So they have been consulted on the application, and they could go back to the ECU with an objection and say we object because it's a risk to our gliding school, or they might equally go back and say actually if where they are, providing they give us notification, they've got the red beacon on the top, they might have no objection, but that is a valid objection if they have that. Thank you. Just to point out as well, in terms of aircraft safety, it's also a military low-fly zone, so the Ministry of Defence are consulted on the application. The Ministry of Defence don't usually object to these types of applications subject to appropriate conditions, but they will be consulted because it is a low-fly zone. Clearly putting something that's 200 metres high on top of the hill is going to have an impact on that, so they will need to do a comprehensive response. Okay. So that's the ECU one. Moving to the other one that Perth and Kinross Council are dealing with. At this moment in time, we have an outstanding objection from Historic Environment Scotland, primarily about the views when viewed from Loch Leven and the impact that would have upon the listed buildings that are there. Now, Historic Environment Scotland are a statutory consultee. So what's happening with that application just now is the applicant is seeking to address their concerns, and they're going to come up with some revisions. And what those revisions are, we don't know. Now, when those revisions come in, if they're minor revisions, we won't re-notify the application. We'll just proceed as we currently have, but if those are quite significant revisions, we will need to carry out a re-notification and open it up for comment again. Now, for that one, it is likely to be probably springtime again that we are putting our recommendation to Planning and Placemaking Committee. Now, ideally, it would be brilliant for us if we could have Craighead and Brunthill at the same committee, because it makes sense to have them at the same committee because they're right next door. The cumulative impacts are a consideration. However, if we've got our one ready to go, We can't wait for the ECU to do their one. It might be that they're at different committees, but if possible, we are going to try and aim for the same committee. But like say, the applicant does have a right of appeal against non-determination, so we don't want to sit on it for the sake of putting it to the same committee. Then they appeal it to the Scottish Government on non-determination, then the Scottish Government are determining both applications. We do want to try and keep the control if we can. And just before you come in as well, if they appeal a non-determination, they can also take the council for expenses, which clearly we do not want. Councillor Waters?
Just this cumulative impact, you know, in a procedural is I find there's a lot of concern that if the you know Perth and Kinross application is getting decided at a different committee from the ECU one, how can within that application can the Perth and Kinross Council look at the cumulative effect, because that has to be both applications. So how can you just look at one individually?
Yeah, so we won't be looking at
the challenges with us getting non-determination against us.
So we won't be looking at them individually. For each of them, we will be saying, so for the Perth and Kinross Council one, we will be saying it's a material consideration that there's an application next door, and we'll assess it on the basis that the one next door is approved. And what would the cumulative impact be? And vice versa, when we do the consultation response to the ECU, it'll be a material consideration, the other one. So we'll be saying, if that were erected, this is what the cumulative impact will be. So we will be assessing the cumulative impact regardless if they are different committees and different times, because it is quite a crucial planning consideration. If they were to both go up, what's happening?
Presumption. So the presumption.
So we will be working on the basis that for each of them, if the other one was to go ahead, what's this additional thing going to be?
And the ECU,
they'll do the same.
They'll presume that the one going through Perth and Kinross Council will be passed as well.
Yeah.
So they have the ability in between to call in.
They do, but they've already indicated to us they won't be calling it in, and we can't challenge them on that. So one last kind of update on all of that is the Energy Consents Unit. So they have an onshore wind team which are clearly dealing with this. They've actually just done a massive recruitment drive, and they're now up to 50 planning officers on their onshore wind team, which is unbelievable considering our major team, we have 3 officers. I don't know where they got the funding for, but I'd like to know. But anyway, they are going up to 50 officers on their onshore wind team. So that should mean that when it does go back to the ECU, it's a relatively fast turnaround. But again, it'll all depend on when the applicant submits the stuff to us. But like I say, because they've indicated on both applications there are revisions coming, at this moment in time, they're both essentially on hold, because there's no point in us coming to a recommendation then they change the scheme. So they're both on hold for now, but I'll let you know when they're coming. Also, a benefit for this committee is both Councillor Cuthbert and Councillor Waters are on the Planning and Placemaking Committee. So they will, well, I don't know if it's a benefit for you, but it's a benefit for the committee. So they will have sight of the agenda. So they will be able to report when it is on the agenda. And I can happily come back at that point and speak through our recommendations, whatever they may be. But at this point in time, Perth and Kinross Council do not have a recommendation on either application. So I can't sit here and tell you we're looking at approval or we're looking at refusal, because we just don't know because of the upcoming revisions.
I was going to ask about the non-determination. It's my favourite subject, of course. Presumably they submitted this quite a long time ago. Have they not reached the end of the period that you should have determined it, or no, have they appealed or asked for it to be extended, or how's that work?
Yeah, so for the benefit of those that don't know, basically when the major application is submitted to the council, we have 4 months to determine that application. If we go over that 4 months without what we call a planning processing agreement in place, so a planning processing agreement is basically an agreement between us and the applicant to go over that. So we might say, for example, look, we need an extra month to sort out this flooding issue for you. They'll sign up to that. If they're in a PPA, they can't appeal against non-determination. If they don't have a PPA, then they can appeal against non-determination if we go over the 4 months. Now we're clearly over the 4 months here, but they're still within the time they can appeal on non-determination. and we've not got a PPA to cover it because we don't know what those dates are going to be. And as a council, we don't want to agree indefinitely to just having this application forever, if you like. But at this moment in time, there's no risk of them, I would say, appealing on non-determination because the ball's in their court to come up with amended schemes. But as soon as that ball comes back to our court, they'll be wanting a quick decision. And at that point,
Did they appeal to the energy consent?
No.
The report.
So it would be the Scottish Government Department of Planning and Environmental Appeals, so DPEA, rather than the ECU, but they still obviously work very closely, both being Scottish Government bodies.
I think Neil's got a question.
Thanks, Richard. Thanks, that's been really helpful. Just a follow-up was Councillor Robertson and I met, I think it was last year, with the Friends of the Yoko, and there was conversations about a third application, which is the expansion of the one that crosses the border, called Slaughter Hill or something, I forget what it's called. Is there any update on whether that's, because that's the other thing about the accumulative one, yes, we've got the two we know about, but there's in that third one just a few meters, a few miles along the hillside, yeah.
Yeah, it's not formally on our radar yet, but it is something we're wary of and considering as we're coming to our recommendation, but there's no formal application, so to speak. But obviously, as soon as there is, that's a different.
What's it called again? What was it? Slaughter?
Windburn.
Sorry?
Windburn.
Yeah.
Windburn. Thanks.
But we did do a formal pre-application inquiry on that one, and again, we had quite significant concerns about landscape and visual impacts. So it's likely, obviously I've not got a crystal ball, but it's likely the applicant is using that pre-app response, trying to come up with a scheme which they think will be supportable, and then they'll submit at that point. But like I say, that's me looking into a crystal ball of
it. Any other questions?
I've got. So say if the Scottish one, the Parliament one, goes through and you reject your one,
yeah,
I take it there would there have to be a really good reason for objecting because the other one's gone through, which is literally in the same area. Would they have a really good strong case for appeal there?
Yeah, so I suppose my response to that would be whatever our recommendation is, whether it's approve or refuse, we're going to need to have a really good case because we'll be challenged either way. So we will have a good reason regardless, but if the ECU one gets through before the Perth and Kinross Council one and say they approve that, then it does come back to us, and one of our main considerations will be the cumulative impact then, because we will then know that's definitely approved, likely to happen. I would say as well, if Perth and Kinross Council refuse the one we've got, they have a right of appeal to the Scottish Government DPEA, which they're more than likely to do, because almost every major that gets refused takes that route.
And then gets authorised.
Yeah,
you've been there before.
I'm not saying anything. They do have a right of appeal. So it's likely that both of them will end up through the government of some sort. But like I say, we'll just have to wait and see what those revisions are.
Billy?
Oh, yes, thank you. When applications like these two that we're discussing come forward, there's never any details about the infrastructure that major wind farms require, which I don't understand because it will need infrastructure like pylons and to connect to the grid.
Yeah.
So, but I don't think pylons need planning consent, do they, or
not always? No. So that's a tricky part. You've hit the nail on the head there. A lot of the associated infrastructure is permitted development for the energy companies. So we can't say we need an application for that because it's permitted development for them. We still like to know exactly what's happening. So we try and get as much information as we can, but we can only request what the legislation allows us to request. But it's difficult when a lot of it is permitted development.
And you're not allowed to say like, because this is an attractive area, you must underground the cables, for example. You can't.
No, because the energy companies have permitted development rights to put pylons in certain places. So it'd be unreasonable for us to ask for underground cables if they could do it permit development otherwise. Putting it down to a local context, it'd be like you building a shed in your garden, for example.
I got consent for that.
But say you've got a shed in the top right hand corner of your garden, which is permitted development, you don't need any planning permission for it. We couldn't come along to you and say it would look better in the left hand corner of your garden, by the way. You would just say, well, tough, it's my garden, these are my permitted development rights. And that's it's obviously bringing that down.
Even though it takes up 3/4 of his garden.
Yeah, but yeah, a lot of these things are permitted, so we can't ask for that information. But like I say, we do try and get as much of it up front, because obviously within our area, we want to see as little pylons and all these sort of things that we possibly can, but we have to account for what we can and can't do.
Any other,
That's helpful.
any other questions?
So again, it's like a sticky one, but if the cumulative impact suggests that it's too much, let's say in sort of general consensus, but one is okay, who wins? I presume this applies to any planning application, whether it's a housing development or a. It's just if I know it's difficult because they're coming up together, and you said it was very inconvenient. But if you do consider that, you know, in theory, if one is a material consideration, if the other one was to be passed, how do you decide? Do they just both fail and then they just have to come back? Or
so we could say that one of them's fine. We might go back and say 13 turbines is fine and have no objection to that one, but the other one we might say that added on to the 13 just makes it too much.
Right.
So we could go for refusal on one, approve the other. We could approve both. We could refuse both. It's open to us what we consider to be too much.
Right.
But that cumulative impact from a landscape perspective, that does, because you're using a presumption that the ECU one will be implemented in full. And if you feel what Neil was saying about the cumulative impact is too much, does that not mean that the council's literally forced down the line to?
No, we won't be forced down any route of what we consider to be cumulative, regardless of the impact. One thing we do have to consider, when I was saying we work on the presumption, if they get 13 turbines, they'll put 13 up. They might just put 5 up and say that's enough, but once they implement it, their consent is live, so they could come back and put the remaining ones up. So we have to work on the assumption that they will put the 13 up if they get the consent for the 13, even though they might put 5 up, they would have the consent to do it in the future. So we work on that basis.
Can I just, we need to watch our time. We're running out, but
I might chat to you offline with this.
That's fine,
because I think there's some bits in there that are a bit. I think Neil caught the gist there.
Yeah, I think it's the relationship with the council, but also the ECU having the same. Yes, you can make that decision. So collectively, how does the ECU and EC decide? Do they reject everything? Is it all or nothing? You know, that's the question. Maybe not an answer to it.
But one, just before I finish, one last thing. The ECU are having these discussions as well. What if PKC do this? What? So it is on both sides' agenda, which is reassuring.
Sean, thank you. Thanks very much. I appreciate you coming down.
Yeah, thank you.
Welcome.
You stay if you want and enjoy the rest.
I'll listen to Steve's item, then I'll go.
Okay. Right. Sorry, got the Steve next.
Yep, Susan.
Yeah. Okay. I'll just maybe start off by just explain my role, because I'm relatively new with the Perth and Kinross Council, and I think a lot of the stuff that we've talked about probably fits within my remit. So as Economic Development Manager for tourism, which I'm here to kind of touch on today, but also culture. So that's delivery of the Perth and Kinross cultural strategy and management of the kind of the contract and relationship we've got with the key ALIO. So that's Perth and Kinross Culture, Theatre and the Concert Hall, and Live Active Leisure as well, which we touched on some of the stuff out here in Kinross-shire. And the final aspect is around place. So it's focusing on Perth city centre, but also the kind of surrounding towns and villages. So again, that brings into Kinross-shire as well. So that's coming up with projects and seeking investment to try and improve these places with a view to enhance economic performance. So that's my role. I just started at kind of beginning of August. So good to appreciate the invite along tonight. But I'm here to talk about the Perth and Kinross tourism strategy, and this is a very early flag on this strategy, and it kind of goes alongside with the potential of a visitor levy as well, which some of you may be aware of. That's kind of that Edinburgh's probably going to be the early adopter. That legislation's been for that. So visitor levy, for those who are not aware of it, is a pot of tax essentially on overnight stays of a certain percentage. So significant values potentially could be raised in Edinburgh. I think it's kind of £50 million a year potentially that would come into the local authority and then be reinvested within the tourism sector. That can be fairly broad in terms of those activities, but that's kind of at local discretion. So those figures, obviously, Edinburgh sits very, very unique and very separate. So you know, what would be raised in Perth and Kinross would be less than that, but still significant. So we're looking at that as well, and you know, we'll be kind of, you know, I'll explain the process for that, taking papers to council to kind of seek views on that. But the way I see it is these kind of two things work hand in hand. So the previous tourism strategy was 2021, I think it was, but kind of knocked off course by the COVID pandemic, but it did help us to secure significant capital investment across the whole of Perth and Kinross. So, you know, things like the museum, and also, you know, thinking of Kinross-shire specifically, I think there was stuff done up at RSPB, and there's been improvements to the kind of Lochleven and Heritage Trail and whatnot. So I think, given all that's happened, kind of external stuff that's happened over the last few years, we feel it's relevant and mindful of the kind of tourism levy as well to revisit this tourism strategy. Now, we are at a very early stage, so this is really a kind of flag, and I suppose that my ask on the committee is to who the best kind of people to consult with are in Kinross-shire, and how you would like to be involved in the process as well. We are just in the process at the moment of drafting this. We have a couple of workshops planned in Burnham in mid-December for the kind of whole of Perth and Kinross, but I don't know if you feel it's something maybe kind of it'd be worth a specific session in Kinross-shire as well, because there's kind of lots of notes, there's lots of activity obviously happening in this area, and I'm really keen that we capture you know, all areas within this tourism strategy. Perth itself obviously acts as a kind of key economic driver, and there's lots of tourism activity across the city, but I think that the stats is kind of over 50% of our tourism GBA is actually in the rural area. So I think it's 52% is in the rural area. So it's really important that we capture all that as well. Kind of there'll be key areas that we'll focus on. So destination marketing is something I think that we definitely need to look at. That's kind of changed over the years. We've moved from a kind of destination marketing organisation, DMO model, to local tourist associations, which have kind of fallen by the wayside a little bit. So we really need to explore how we do that and how we deliver this destination marketing. We need an infrastructure plan as well as part of our tourism strategy. So we need to identify where those gaps are, where the opportunities are, and kind of on the back of that, we need to come up with some ideas. Events also falls into that, and I know Kinross has got kind of a vibrant local events programme, but also kind of business support as well. How do we deliver dedicated business support to the tourism sector? That's worked in previous roles that I've been involved in, where we kind of, you know, really tailor that business support, whether it be through Gateway, through GrowBiz, or whatever that might be, to try and support growth in the sector as well. So the next stage is out to kind of consultation. We anticipate taking papers to the council committees. So the tourism strategy and action plan will go to economy and infrastructure early part of next year. And given the kind of financial aspect of the tourism levy, that will go to finance and resources committee early next year as well. So the two will go hand in hand. But you know, there's an opportunity there through the levy potentially to get investment, but we need to demonstrate what the type of activities would be alongside that as well. So that's kind of me. It was really just to give you an early flag of that, and say we're out to consultation and keen to make sure that we've got representation from across the areas. So I'll make sure that happens.
Can I just kick off quickly with
Yeah.
consultation? So local consultation for us for Kinross-shire and Glenfarg. What's the deadline? What's your timescales for?
I think, I mean, I'm keen we move on this as quickly as possible. So I would do, I think, kind of up until the end of January. I think, you know, we want that kind of consultation process to be complete. So yeah, we'll get out with some, you know, a kind of programme of activity and dates and stuff quickly on that.
Neil,
it's very interesting listening to what you're saying about the tourism and trying to involve. We need something down at this end, not Perth and above, and it's not being discredited to Perth and above. You have one at Burnham. We need something down at this end where we can get local community councils involved. You mentioned RSPB, you've got Lochleven Heritage Trail. We've got so many things for tourism and bringing people in, and it might tie in with some of the work that you're trying to do with it. If you're looking at potential community hub for motorhomes could potentially come out there, so you've got something coming in. I think you need something down this end so that we can all get involved rather than having to go up to Burnham. Not that I mind going to Burnham, but
No, I think you're right, and that's appreciated. And, I think I'm kind of deliberately made that point. So I think that's important for me, and still relatively new into post. But one of the things is joining all these things up together, so we can make the visitor economy a bit more stickier, so people are staying here longer and spending a bit more money. There's so much great stuff happening, and I just even hearing a lot of the active travel stuff that in cycling infrastructure and paths and whatnot today. It's all part of the tourist experience. So I think a key thing is how we, and I suppose it goes back to my destination marketing first point. How do we tie all these things together so there's a really kind of joined up offer across Perth and Kinross, because there's loads of great stuff happening.
Bill, and then Drew.
Well, what I was going to suggest, you want consultation. There's a big event happening on Saturday in the high school here, which is the farmers market / winter festival market, and it draws people from county-wide, to it. Usually we do it outside because the weather conditions is threatening, so we're having to move it inside. There'd be a good opportunity to get all the locals and all the people that come through.
Day after tomorrow.
It is, and I'm usually like, you can go above and beyond, but we do have our Christmas light switch on Saturday, and that is part of my remit as well. Although I've also got one eye on the weather as well. So yeah, but
I have light switch on the Saturday afterwards. So you want to come down.
But we'll reach out and make sure that appropriate events and stuff are part of consultation.
I was just going to say, there are future events. I know this is the last of the season, but there will be a new season of farmers markets events in the new year. So another opportunity there.
Okay, great.
You'll not be surprised that my comment's going to be about transport. Tourists, if they're going to get to tourist destinations, have to have transport. And within Kinross-shire, we've got an absolutely brilliant heritage trail, but we don't have any transport to get around it unless you want to walk all the way around. We used to have a really good round the loch bus, which was very poorly used, but as we know, it's often poorly used because it's poorly organised. And I think if we could have another go at doing that during the summer at least. And the other comments about theatre and whatever, if that's your, it's fine getting to the theatre if you've got a car, but public transport tends to stop at about 6 o'clock at night. And it would be really good to have public transport linked to theatre so that all of these things actually link together.
No, I totally agree. And there's lots of interdependencies. I think tourism's a sector that is really important to Perth Kinross on its own, but it touches on so many other sectors as well, and it's got a lot of interdependencies as well. Yeah. I take the point, and transport comes up at most events and most meetings that I go to. It's something that we need to consider, but also it's delivering stuff within our gift as well. I think that we need to be setting kind of realistic ambitions and activities, but it definitely is something that we need to look at, and it will be part of the plan.
Thank you.
Just one point. I think there's a lot of a hangover is that when you think of Perth and the destination market, it's a big tree country, which is north of Perth. Mm-hmm. Big tree country doesn't apply to anything south of Perth. We're flat. Okay, we've got the Ockhills, but so I think maybe they need to rethink about what you look at Perth and Kinross as what its features. Yeah. I think if you mentioned Perthshire to anybody, they will just go big tree country. Yeah. It was a great
slogan, and a sensible brand.
But, it doesn't really have anything to do with down here.
Yeah. And absolutely noted. And I think we need to come up with a strategy that covers the whole geographical area. So, yeah.
Scottish Loch.
Okay. Funny you should say that, because when they decided the council decided to promote Perthshire, big tree country, myself and my ward council colleagues at that time objected strongly the fact that Kinross was being sidelined, or we saw it not getting any funding. And we actually got funding, special funding at the time, to try and promote Kinross-shire. And we did things like the Kinross-shire signs when you come into Kinross-shire to show it was a distinct county. And there was other things that the money was used, but I think it was used for the map that showed the heritage trail. And but that funding ran out and it was never replaced. But we recognised then that Kinross-shire has to be included, because Perthshire Tourist Board was another thing that used to really annoy me. I know you get annoyed sometimes when they get missed out, but I used to get so cross at that, you know.
It's Perth and Kinross and Glenfarg.
It all makes the branding quite tricky.
Now say Glenfarg and Perth and Kinross. That's the way.
I mean, also
there is an issue.
Yeah, I mean, this will be led by the council, the delivery of this strategy action plan, but supported by a number of partners. But it's also overseen by the Perth and Kinross Business Tourism Partnership. I've got that right. So we need to make sure that there's representation on that from across, so those voices have been heard, which again will make sure that happens.
I think there's a clear, more questions. I think there's a clear desire to have an event here, and certainly as elected members and the community councils, we will make sure we get the full breadth, because whether it's Mundell music or down the visitor attractions down the lock or anything like that, and we'll get the word out. There used to be a really strong tourism forum within Kinross, but the pandemic kind of killed it off, and it's the partnership, Kinross partnership, led on that. And last year I did have an attempt to try and see if we could persuade them, when Ruth Crawford was the chair, to get it started up again. But that was something that would be nice to be seen. And maybe this. That's not
that's not expensive. Kinross, I think a lot of these kind of tourism organisations have dwindled over the last few years, which is unfortunate. So that's why we need to look at an alternative model potentially around destination marketing.
I think I could ask 100 questions on the tourism levy as such. Can I ask, once the papers are produced and once you're in there, any chance you can come back to this committee?
Well, we can make the request.
There will be a members' briefing as well on the tourism levy as well.
Sometime around then, can you come back here and just give an update on the
after that briefing, we can come back.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much for that.
You're welcome to stay. I imagine you want to get away.
Yeah, my stomach's rumbling. Is that what I guess? Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm conscious of the time, so we need to speed up a wee bit here. But we're moving on to core 5. I think, Andy, you still there?
Yes, indeed.
Just thought I'd give you a bit of background on this. Basically, there's been interest locally in some paths being put into the core path network. So, for example, we were looking at the path down at the bottom of Kinross. There's also in Portmoak, they're looking at the possibility of paths and following well to Portmoak. So we get in Eswood. So it's a question of how does it work, and are there paths we can get adopted, and so on. You want to go on and tell us about that?
Okay, I'll try and share this technology permitting. I have a little short presentation on it, and also, if it's okay, I'll roll on after that into item 10 about the green space adoption, if that's okay, and I'll take questions in between. So I'll just see if this shares, and then I'll talk you through it. So can you see the slide?
Yep, you're okay.
Excellent. Right. Okay, so new core paths, then there's really just 2 options for this. The first one is a full core paths plan review. It would be Perth and Kinross wide and follow a similar process to the original core paths plan. And there's actually some information online on the Perth and Kinross Council website if anybody wants to have a look at it. If you just type in core paths, it gives you a bit of the history and how the original core path plan was put together. It is a statutory document. It sits under the Land Reform Scotland Act, and it's very comprehensive and quite time consuming to produce. I think we perhaps had the largest core path plan and network of any Scottish authority when we did it originally, and it was a huge amount of work at that time. Unfortunately, we don't have any resources to kick that off at the moment, but also we're awaiting some Scottish Government guidance on how the process should work for a core paths plan review. And obviously, given the resources it requires to do it, we don't want to sort of start that process too early and then find out that we haven't followed the correct procedures for doing it. So I think they drafted guidance back in 2017, so I'm hoping that'll be coming forward at some point, and then we can consider what we do with that. It would involve producing quite a few plans of, including the routes that you just suggested at the start there. There'd have to be consultation on it. We'd have to look at all the objections. That would, unless you can talk out all the objections, which when it's to do with paths is very unlikely, there would have to be a sort of public inquiry to hear all the different viewpoints on the pros and cons of those path routes, and then there would be Scottish Government ministerial approval for that at the end, and then ultimately the council would have to approve it as well as a revised core paths plan. So that's one way of doing it, the more time-consuming and complicated way of doing it. We can also do up to 5 single non-contentious amendments to our existing core paths plan per year. However, they must have unilateral agreement and no objections, so we would again have to consult on it. If there were objections, we'd do our best to talk them out, but if there was ultimately objections, it would have to go to an inquiry again. Obviously, it's fairly rare for people not to object. Quite often the landowners will not be necessarily too keen on the route, but sometimes we have got some landowners across Perth and Kinross who are very pro-path, and if we get them in the right locations, they're quite supportive of it, so that it can happen. And then obviously that would again require sort of Scottish Government ministerial ratification, because it's a statutory process that we need to go through. So that's really it on how you put new core paths onto the map. So I don't know if you've any questions on that at all.
Can I just start by asking, have you got any non-contentious ones going through at the moment?
We've done a few, but not at the moment. We did them back in 2017, and mainly they were just ones that were modifying an existing route. So if the route wasn't accurate on the plan when it was originally provided, and it's actually there's a better way round, then it's those sorts of amendments we've made. They're quite small. They're not actually new paths, but I think we could put a new path through if everybody was in agreement with it.
Okay, well, do you want to come in first?
Yeah. Thanks, Andy. That's really helpful. Do you have? We have identified 1 or 2 potential new core paths in Kinross-shire. Do you have the resources? If we put those forward, have you got the resources to take them forward?
Well, we could look at it in terms of a non-contentious amendment. If we've got the route, we can certainly have a look at it. And if we can progress it, we will. But if it's going to be contentious, then the best thing for us to do is just note that and add it to the list that we've got that we will look at once we get to a full core paths plan review.
Okay, thank you.
In terms of the benefits of being a core path, is there money available to upgrade and sort of build a new core path, or how does that work?
Short answer is no. We're working on one upgrade that was agreed through committee back. It was quite a long time ago now. I followed the core path. Oh, we lost my presentation. No.
Don't worry, keep going.
Right. Okay. Yeah, something's happened. But anyway, yeah. So there wasn't any funding to go with it. It's Comrie to Creef, and so we're fairly heavily reliant on Sustrans to fund that. So I believe there is some Sustrans money coming to the council at some point, and due to a change with Transport Scotland, but I'm not sure how that's to be allocated or how that would factor into delivering paths. I think a lot of it's to do with sort of cycle networks and that type of thing alongside roads.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Kevin, do you want to?
Yeah, Andy, I just wanted to clarify, you talked about there being 5 specific changes per year. Do those changes include moving a core path?
Yes, if it's a small modification. So that's what I said. If there was a error on the plan or a route that's slightly better and the landowner's actually really pleased with that and would rather we went on that route, then we could make an amendment on that basis. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's traditionally what the amendment process is used for. So that's possible. But I mean, if you've got any suggestions for either new core paths or amendments, and you can obviously contact me, or I can put you in touch with some of my team who deal with that sort of work.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, all happy. Can we move on? I think you're doing the next one as well. But,
I am. I'll do the first part of it on the green space adoption, if that's okay. Yeah. Have you got my presentation back?
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. Right. Okay. So public open space adoption then, it's part of the fairly recent supplementary guidance, which is a formal sort of planning document on open space provision on new developments. And it includes the maintenance options for public open space in new residential developments policy 2020, and all of that was approved at full council, as you can see, on the 27th of January, and then ratified again by Scottish Government ministers because it's an official planning document. And both of these documents they're linked on the presentation, but you can again get those both on the council's website. So anyway, what that says, the supplementary planning guidance and the maintenance document, is there's two types of public open space. Priority public open space, which is to be adopted by the council, and that includes play areas, sports pitches, parks, and sort of structural landscape areas. In order for us to adopt it, we must have approved the plans. It must be properly implemented and then maintained for 12 months by the developer to an adoptable standard. We must have title transferred to the council and a commuted sum, which is also in the guidance, paid. Sorry, I'll just go back a step. So those commuted sums, there's a separate commuted sum for play areas. So if there's a play area on the development, depending on the classification of the play area, an amount that has to be paid for that. If it's just general open space, it is a set figure per dwelling unit or house that would come across to us. And then if it's got unusual or additional open space, like a sort of very large country park or something like that, then we would have to do an extra calculation for some of that additional open space. So that's how that works. Assuming all that goes ahead and everything's paid up and we get title to the ground, then we adopt it and then we look after it in perpetuity. The other type of public open space is not the sort of high priority stuff, so the big things like play areas and sports pitches. It might be smaller areas or sort of an amenity area, but it would still need to be of general use to the public. So not the very tiny little sort of semi-private courtyards or shrub planting around, parking areas, that type of thing. It would need to be of public use. And that would, if we don't adopt it, then it could be factored by a developer, and that would put the responsibility on the householders. They would need to set up an owners association, and then they would need to manage the factor who would look after that open space at an annual cost to them if it didn't come to the council. If it comes to the council, it's the same process that I spoke about for the priority public open space. So the commuted sums are equivalent to the 20 years maintenance costs, and they're index linked. And as I said, there's a flat rate per dwelling unit for open space and a sum for play areas, specific play areas. So that's it really. It's fairly straightforward, all detailed within the sort of policy document. So again, if you've any questions on that, happy to take them.
I think we've got one from Richards. We'll start with that.
Just Andy, thanks for that. Andy, as elected members, and I'm sure my colleagues will say the same thing, we often come across some cases that, or not often, but certainly come a good number, where we come across bits of land that we think's adopted and it's not, and then we've got to chase up and find out who owns it. And sometimes the developer's gone bankrupt or sold on to somebody else. And I wish we still had Sean here with this, from like as an example, we've got the Lathrow Country Park, which is still owned by Persimmon. There's a lot of concern in the community about whether that's going to get adopted or whether it's just going to sit under Persimmon for forever. And there's some chat about how you get it up to the, through planning we set conditions and the standards we want. But sometimes from your perspective, what do you need with it and how do we guarantee that we get that adopted as a council asset going forward?
Yeah, well, normally we would rely on the planning system to make sure that the developer fulfilled his obligations and delivered the public open space. And obviously with the new supplementary guidance, if it's priority public open space, then we're saying to the developer, you have to pass that to the council. That's a newish policy. I think in the past, the previous policy, although we did say it had to come to the council, a lot of developers just factored it off to householders, and that's why we needed to strengthen the policy through the supplementary guidance. So really, we would rely on the planning system to make sure that the developer delivered. If it said that the public open space had to be adopted by the council, then we would rely on that to enforce that. I mean, there are some historic cases where adoptions didn't fully complete. So whilst we may be maintaining the ground, the title didn't transfer and it may still be owned by some developers, but we're gradually working through those. They're mainly sort of the 80s and the early 90s that started to happen. And we're sort of still trying to catch up with some of those cases. It's very difficult. Like you say, if a developer goes bust, then who do you negotiate with? And quite often the companies that are put in place to look after when a company fails, they're not that interested in solving those sorts of problems. So it is difficult in some circumstances.
And are you still, sorry, you still in, just very quickly, and you work with enforcement to ensure that it is up to.
Yes, very closely. Yes, there's quite a few that we're working with enforcement on at the minute that we're not satisfied with the standard, and they're very helpful in trying to make sure that the developer fulfills his obligations.
Thank you. Okay, are there any other questions? Yes, Drew?
Just a quick comment that as somebody that lives on a new development that hasn't been taken over yet, we pay full whack council tax, but we don't get things like rubbish bins or poo bins, and all the community walk through the village. All the villagers walk through the development. Are you suggesting that we should maybe put up a gate saying keep out, or charge them a fee for walking the dog through, or whatever? It's just a simple thing. We need poo bins in a non-taken over estate.
Yeah, we would have to look at the title on that particular case, but that's why we advocate that it comes across to the council, because then we can provide things on ground that we own and maintain. If it's not been taken on by the council, it's not our ground, and we can't, insist on putting bins and things like that in.
We should maybe get a 10% council tax reduction then, so that we can do it ourselves.
Right, should we move on? Does anyone else have any questions or comments? Okay, I think the next bit's going to be done by Willie Mahoney. This is to do with the adoption of roads. Just to give you some background on this, there is a road in Kinross that Alan Smith Gardens. The residents are very keen to see it adopted, but my understanding is that part of the problem is that the sewer that's on the site is a shared sewer and not separate, and they've been told they have to separate out the sewage from the rainwater to go into the combined sewer on the street. But perhaps you could give us some background and cover that point when you're talking about it.
Right. I'll just give you a wee brief introduction. I'm Willie Mahoney. I'm a senior engineer in the Roads Maintenance Partnership with Perth and Kinross Council. I'd actually prepared a short paper because I just wasn't sure just exactly what the main question that you were wanting to ask was, and I'd included how a road gets adopted, a new road that's been constructed by a developer gets adopted. It's a fairly straightforward process.
Would you like to make that presentation? I mean, you feel free, but we've got about 10 minutes.
I can do that, and that's fine if you don't mind doing it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right, firstly, what is a road? A road's defined in the Road Scotland Act 1984 as a way over which there is a right of public passage. So that could mean that the Road Scotland Act defines that as a road as a right of public passage. It doesn't refer to waterways, solely roads. An access connects connects properties to a road. The road could be a historic road. Many roads have been established over centuries. Most were upgraded during the 20th century when asphalt became standard road surface and material. So how does the road get adopted through this procedure? In general, most have been constructed in association with new housing development or a new industrial development. The developer gains planning consent to construct a new development, whether it be industrial or residential. And if a new road is being constructed, the developer will need to obtain a road construction consent, which will include conditions, specifications and design details. After completion of the development, the developer can choose to apply to have the road adopted. If the road has been constructed in accordance with the road construction consent, the road will enter a 12-month maintenance period, during which time the developer is responsible for the upkeep of the road, same as Andy's. After maintenance period, provided there is no outstanding defects, the council will adopt the road, and however, in some instances, the developer will not seek to have a road adopted. In new housing developments, there may be some sections of road that are not adopted. These tend to be short sections of road, maybe leading to 3 or 4 houses. If the road serves less than 5 properties, they would be considered to be an access. There are many roads throughout Perth and Kinross that are determined to be private roads. These have either been historic roads which were not adopted or not added to the council's list of public roads in 1984, or recently constructed roads. And there's been several roads, I'm going to sound parochial, in Highland Perthshire, where hydroelectric developments were constructed during the 1950s and 1960s, and they never put any of these roads up for adoption. Hydroelectricity companies, the Scottish and Southern Energies, now sold these properties all off, and in many instances the residents of on development are asking that the council adopt the roads. So this brings me on to an alternative route, which is when the frontagers or the owners of a private road request that the council consider adding a road to the list of public roads. The council requires that they're represented by one person or one party, and they will be responsible for gaining approval of the requisite number of frontagers. And the requisite numbers of frontagers usually amount to 50%, and it can be determined by length or by number of property owners. The council will then carry out a visual survey of such roads and determine what work is likely to be required to allow the road to be adopted. The council then have to list the works that are required and provide an estimate of the cost of the work likely required to allow the road to be adopted. At this stage, it will be made clear that the estimate for works will be clarified following a full survey, providing that the residents or the owner of the road wish to pursue it further. That survey will involve a physical topographical survey and also include excavations in the existing road surface to determine the foundation layers of the road. If the frontagers then wish to continue, full details, a further estimate will be carried out by providing details of all the work that's required and with a final estimate. This is provided to the representative, who would then have to talk with all the residents on the road to determine if they're willing to meet the costs that will be required to bring the road to an adoptable standard. And if everybody agrees to that, the council will then pursue it further. Before the council will carry out any works on the road, all payments must be made. So effectively, the full cost of the road upgrading is in place with the council before any work commences. Sometimes this isn't a great deal of money. However, there is one particular road that I'm working on at the moment. It's only 190 metres long, but the work involved to bring it to an adoptable standard is £190,000. So there's 26 people live on that road, and if that was to be funded by them, it's quite a sizable sum of money that they've all got to pay. However, some frontagers may refuse to pay it, so the remaining frontagers would have to decide, well, will we meet the additional costs of the non-payers? The instances when the people can refuse to pay for it is, for instance, if they live at the start of the road and they're only maybe travelling over 5 metres or 10 metres of the road to get to their property, whereas other people are travelling over 200 metres to get to their property. So they consider that it's not fair for them to pay for the benefits for the other 190 metres of road. When the agreement is reached with all projects and the road has been constructed to an adoptable standard, it can then move forward to become added to the list of public roads. As colloquially, it's known as adopted, and it's the term that everybody tends to use. If there's any legal work required with respect to adopting the road, the frontagers or the owner of the road will be required to meet these costs. This would only occur if, for instance, a new footway had to be constructed and it had to be formed in somebody else's, in part of one of the properties, and that just so that there's a safe passage from one, from the existing public road network to the new road. The benefits in having the road adopted don't seem particularly great, contrary to what your former member suggested, that you don't get litter bins lifted, you don't get dog waste provided and all that.
What did you do to him?
Pardon?
I was talking about you.
Oh, no. I just touched my phone at the same time as well, so I'm just thinking, have I done something?
Hello?
Yep.
Oh,
you're back.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, so I was just about finished anyway. So yeah, the main benefit that people get is that the road might receive some winter service treatment. They might be gritted, might receive grit bins. All other council functions should actually apply to a private road as it does to a road that is on the list of public roads. And that's roughly all I want to say, but I'll certainly endeavour to answer any questions, but I might not be able to answer them all, but I'm not actually involved in the formal adoption process, and that, so if there's any questions there, I might have to take them back to my colleagues and return to you on that.
Okay, well, that was fascinating. I think a lot of people were taking notes there. Maybe Andy can assist you perhaps if there's questions that are a wee bit complicated.
Yep.
Does anybody have any questions? Neil?
Yeah, one question. Thanks very much, Willie. Unadopted roads, which Drew stays and houses, I'm the same. Last year at this time, we spoke and had a presentation from someone about the maintenance of the roads, about the winter maintenance, and we were advised that there are manual pieces of equipment which can be supplied by the council to allow us to take ourselves to grit the street. Who would be the contact for that, Willie?
If you make contact, just myself in the first instance, I'll certainly be able to get that dealt with from here.
Thank you.
That's good. Any other questions? Was that comprehensive and covered?
Send two.
Yeah, I think given the time, we'll move on. Thank you, Willie, and thank you, Andy. You're free to go if you want. You can stay if you like, right. But you probably want to get home. Thank you.
Thanks very much, then.
Thank you.
Right.
Sorry, I need to have to leave. So Nicola will take my spot.
It's for reserve.
Training your accents. Thanks very much, everybody. We'll see you along.
Well, I think the next thing is track.
Right, is it right?
Okay, about 10 minutes, right?
And that's not very long. You can either let me go through a presentation or I can give you a verbal update. The verbal update will probably be quicker.
How long's the presentation?
It might be 15-20 minutes.
We need to get away bus.
Yeah, no, I thought so. Okay. Sorry. Well, no, I think it might be easy to give a verbal update. Willie Robertson asked me to come along, principally to update you as to where tracks are with the work that we've been doing around the trail, and then principally to look at what I'm calling the work on the linking paths. So for the last 3 years, we've been working away on the main part of the Heritage Trail. So we've divided it up into 3 phases. We're looking at carrying out the 3rd and final phase on the main part of the trail next spring. Now, we've got the funding in place for that. I've tendered the work, so we've just about appointed a contractor.
So in total, once we finish the work next spring, that would have been £500,000 worth of work that's been spent on the trail. The trail, built over an 8-year period, the last section of it was completed in 2014. Since then, there's been virtually no maintenance or repair work on the trail. The trail, to put it bluntly, was absolutely shot. So I've been looking at it more or less as a labour of love to try and get it back to the condition that it was in when it was built, and if anything, to make it much better than that, because we've got better materials available to us now, and we can also spot where the weak points are that we're not fully aware of when the trail was built, because it was built over land that, essentially was farmland or through woodland. Very difficult to read the land. Subsequently, we can now do that. So those of you who've hopefully used the trail over the last year or two will have seen quite a dramatic improvement. What we've done principally is to resurface it. It's a wind dust surface that goes onto it in the main. A wind dust surface is a wearing surface. Wearing surface that will last between 6 to 8 years, and it then needs replacing. So you can see the length of time that's passed since the trail was created. It badly needed updating. So we've widened the trail back out to the original 1.8 metres. We've resurfaced, we've raised the trail in places where water was ponding because of groundwater level or the path had sunk. What we've also done is look at using specialised materials where there was excessive wear, either because of gradient or because of very low-lying areas, which the surface and the main path forming material was getting washed away by the groundwater level. So that's where we are in terms of the main trail, and best part of £500,000 worth of funding. That's just to say that £160,000 has come from Perth and Kinross Council. And what we've been able to do is lever in funding from other organisations, principally the Paths for All Ian Findlay Fund, which we've had £250,000 from. Also Arthur and Margaret Thompson Fund, Trust, and the Gallagher Trust. So we've managed to, £500,000 is quite a big deal, I think, in these current times when money is quite difficult to find. So what I've now started working on is what I'm calling phase 4, which is looking at the linking paths that we haven't managed to pick up as we've gone around the loch. So there are 4 main routes that I've started to look at, and I've put together estimated costs. So we're looking at the Sunny Park to Mary's Gate. You'll be very familiar with that because it starts opposite where we used to live. So that's about 1.5 kilometres. There's the Old Mart Road to the Burley Crossroads, and then there's a section that goes through woodland down to Burley Sands, which is owned by Kinross Estate Company and adjoins the field that's where the golf facility is being proposed. So that again, that's probably about another 1.5 kilometres. There's at the Findity side of the loch, at Findity car park, there's 2 ramps that go off the car park that are badly needing repairing, resurfacing, and we'd certainly like to use what I call specialised material on the very steep part of the ramp there. Specialised material, it's a rubberised compound made from pulverised car tyres mixed with a polyurethane binding agent, stone mixed through it and then laid. The idea is it will last as long as tarmac or even longer. So we're building in resilience where we can. Some of it's quite expensive to do, but worth doing in short stretches where there's excessive wear and tear. So, and the final bit is a couple of stretches of path in Kirkgate Park, one leading from Sandport Gate to the main trail and another one leading from the road as you enter the park onto the main trail. There's about another 170 metres or so. So those 4 different parts combined, estimated costs at the moment in the region of about £90,000. So I think that will probably go up because we don't plan on doing that work into 2026. So once we tender it, taking inflation, increasing costs and so forth into consideration, we'll be looking at somewhere around about £100,000. So the plan at the moment, and this is where Willie comes in, is to lever in
about £30,000 from Perth and Kinross Council. That'll then allow me to go to Paths for All Ian Findlay Fund, who will fund up to 70% of costs. I've already had a discussion with the Paths for All fund managers. I put an expression of interest into these. They've accepted. So in principle, it's a project that they will fund. It's now subject to the detail of working up an application and the justification, and also demonstrating that we've got match funding. So that's where we are, and I'm quite get that £30,000 promised relatively soon, so I can then work up the application next year in the hope of getting the work done spring 2026.
Okay. Okay, that's wonderful. I think the pass amazing, by the way. Any question?
Yes, Nick, we were at a presentation by First Sight Estates down at the boathouse.
Yes.
And they were chatting about taking the path as it goes through the car park boathouse and the bikes going behind, but reopening up the path along the path.
And discussion
opening. Well, that was my question.
What they would like is, because they're redeveloping the boathouse, they would like, I think, a short sort of walk associated with the boathouse where they can put, quite, I suppose, quite expensive features, perhaps in terms of perhaps a bird viewing area, bird boxes. They want to, show that they're doing their bit for the natural environment on the property that they own, the immediate environments to the boathouse. So I've said I'm quite happy to work with them on that.
Yeah, but they'll be redoing that path which hasn't been used since the start of the pandemic. That will be them that will do that.
They will do that. Yeah. Essentially, the trail used to go in front of the boathouse. When the car park went in, we agreed that it's sensible to take the trail behind the car park side of the boathouse. I think there was also always that conflict between users at the boathouse and the pier side, particularly cyclists going through, when people were sort of milling about, and you know all about that.
Okay,
I just wanted to give you another update on where we are with this. The leader of the council came down on Tuesday morning, Grant Lane, to see the works that we've already done, how we've spent £160,000 worth of council money on upgrading the trail, and also to let them see what Nick's plans are for the upgrade of the path leading onto the trail. And I think he was, I'm correct in saying he was quite positive. My ward councillor colleagues were there as well. Neil couldn't manage because of work commitments, but I think he was quite positive. Am I correct? So we're hoping to get that 30,000 put into the capital budget for 2026-27.
Yeah.
And that'll be done in this next budget round in February. So once it's in, hopefully it'll be there.
He was positive, but he is a politician.
Yeah.
So
Can I just say on the other side of this, it costs millions of pounds to put in the Heritage Trail, and then if you're going to build a facility and use public money and grant money for it, it is important that you can maintain it, because nothing is worse than getting money and the asset you build then starts to constantly deteriorate from years. So I think I'm delighted the fact Tracks have been successful with it, and Nick has been successful in leaving all this money in, because I think it's a major asset for Kinross-shire. We need to make sure it stays there.
It will all need doing again in about 10 years.
Yes.
Are there any more questions?
Just a comment on the obviously, can that maintenance be factored into something like the tourism strategy? Because obviously that's an important part of it. You're thinking it's not very long, 6 years. You thought like 6 years.
No,
it doesn't last very long, and it feels like that could be, although it's maybe not the responsibility of tourism, it's an important part. If it's not done, I mean, you saw the state of the one that was just repaired. I think I was on it the week before it was shut. It's literally returned to nature, basically.
Yeah.
if it's not in the, it's a huge park, because that's our biggest asset. There's any question about it, town tourism. I kind of feel that maintenance should be part, the heritage shop maintenance should be part of the tourism strategy to make sure it's on the agenda. So when it comes around for things like funding, it's not a surprise suddenly we need to find £500,000 to repair it. It's
the tourist levy.
Yeah,
the tourist levy.
Again, and literally, if the tourist levy comes in, it's a key.
And the path stuff is direct. It is direct tourism. You're not pushing the boundaries to sit and say it's not. And I think as the paper goes through council and as decisions are made in the political arena, ensuring that and it is significant money.
People just stop using it. I mean, the money will have been lost when people knew it was shut. So I think it's. I said I don't know if that qualifies for going to the tourism strategy, but it seems like a no-brainer that should be part of it. Is routine maintenance of.
Bring them back and you can beat them off about it.
Yeah,
I'm sure of that. Well, are we all happy to move on?
Yeah.
Thank you very much for that presentation. I think the final one is William Gregg on the cemetery expansion. There is a brief thing on the CIF funding, but we'll come to that in a minute. William, you've got about 10 minutes, so feel free to.
Yeah, thank you very much, convener. Now, I'm sharing a presentation. Is that?
Yep, it's coming through very well.
Right, thank you very much. Thank you. I'll introduce myself first. My name's Willie Gregg. I'm a bereavement services team leader. I've been with the council for around 10 years, and I've recently taken the chair for pushing this project forward. Prior to that, there was a number of architects and that who were leading that. They've unfortunately left the council, so it's now sitting with myself and my team. I think some of the members have already heard this presentation before, so if I could move it on to the next slide, I'd appreciate that if it would move for me. Okay, so the search for one last, is that okay?
The presentation's disappeared, I'm afraid.
Sorry?
The presentation's disappeared from our screen.
I think it's still on mine, and I'll share that. I'll just have to share each page, I think, as we go through.
That worked.
There you go. Right. Sorry about that. Okay, some time ago, a search for one large cemetery site to serve Kinross-shire area was undertaken. A number of sites have been identified over the last 2 or 3 years. 4 sites were initially identified around the Kinross area. It's the Kinross and Malmethort area. We've looked at most of these sites and they've all been unsuitable. Around the Burley Castle area, we've done a number of desktop exercises there, and Historic Scotland put a stop to us carrying out any test digs. So we've moved that on, and obviously Portmoak and Orwell Cemetery are 2 that we're looking at the moment. I'm just going to move this on. So that's some of the sites that we've looked at already. The only site is that okay? Are you getting that up?
Yeah, you're fine.
Sorry. I could send the whole presentation to you as well, so you can get that. The only site that's still in the mix is the Lathrow one at 117 at Queeshwick Bridge. That's been included in the LDP3 plan, so we can have a look at that. But at the moment, we can't get access onto that. So we're hoping that we can soon get on there. And you can see that's basically just reinforcing what I just says to you. So I know that you have got more questions than I'm probably got answers here, so I'll move on quickly so you can ask. Suitable ground is difficult to find as local authorities must compete with house builders, industrial use and farmers to obtain land. On occasion, we receive no response to a request to enter the grounds to carry out test digs. That happens to the majority of the requests that we put out, unfortunately. Farmers who are tenants on that land, it's usually run by estates like Mansfield Estate, etc., and they just didn't enter into any kind of conversation with us. Compulsory purchase is an option that we would probably look at if we found a bit of ground that was suitable, and we actually thought that we would have the opportunity to go through a compulsory test dig option, but we've since found out that that's not available to us. We can't go on the ground just to carry out test digs. So that's a big problem for us taking things forward as well. The Marine Service are working closely with planning, estates, the legal team and green space architects to form plans and look for ground on this. Ground investigations were carried out on any suitable sites coming forward where landowners are willing to allow access. We have carried out a number of test digs in the Kinross-shire area previously, like I said, and a lot of them have been unsuccessful. Sample test digs, we dig down to 3 foot and we send away the soil for sampling. It's got to have it's got to be soak away. If there's any water table, a high water table on it, then it's not acceptable. So there's a big criteria set forward by SEPA for us to take ground forward for burial grounds. At Portmore Cemetery, title deed searches have been carried out and the landowners identified, and they're fairly local, so we'll be able to contact these people fairly quickly. In my conversations with planning, they're wanting to withhold the actual approaching the landowners until such times as, this is why thank you for giving me the opportunity to present this, because I think we need to have a full consultation with the local community and yourselves to see if this is an option that's available to us at Portmore. There's a large field on the adjacent left-hand side as you're going past the road that would give us enough ground there. There's 3 acres there, gives enough ground for to put in 90 to 100 years burial use. We wouldn't take all that ground at one time. We would develop it in small parcels, and as that fills up, we would open that up and develop it. Obviously, one of the concerns for us is that it would increase traffic through the village. Now, the whole Kinross-shire at the moment only carry out about 34 burials per annum between the whole of Kinross-shire and all the cemeteries within there. So it wouldn't really impact all that much, because we've got a number of cemeteries that would still be in tandem, still be open in tandem with us. So it'd be a long time before we're probably pushing 34 burials per annum into that area. As you can see, that's the map there for Portmore, and that would be the size of the area that we would be looking for. If you have a look at the existing churchyard, you can see that in comparison to the ground that we're hoping to get. Obviously, we would take that probably in 6 different parcels to develop that, starting at the road end adjacent to the church, and come down in the nearest village. We have been told previously that the landowners are hoping to build houses on that at some point, but I don't think there's any been planning are aware of that. So we'll just wait until such times that there's a better consultation. Monmouththorpe Oral Cemetery, which I know is a topic that's high on the agenda. States have carried out a search for that, and they haven't found anything apart from in 1924. Where the original cemetery extension ground was purchased partly from Richard Orwell and part from a James Black. I know some of the councillors have come forward with names. I've got other names as well that have been put into the mix for claiming that as their land. If any assistance could be brought to the table for the elected members, I'd appreciate that greatly. This has just happened today, that I've kind of stalled the second search getting carried out, because if I think somebody's hinted that they may have the title deeds for that, so I didn't want to spend £600 on an additional search when somebody could come forward with a set of title deeds in the near future. So hopefully that's an option that's positive. And there's the area at the back of Orwell. Now, it doesn't offer a great deal of extra. It gives us about 20 years capacity if we were just using it around the Orwell Church, around the Monmouththorpe area. If that was to be our only cemetery, our main cemetery, instead of all the Kinross-shire, it would only offer us about 7 or 8 years. The whole Kinross-shire at the moment, like I said, has got a good number of layers available, probably 34 years within the whole, at the moment, within the whole of Kinross-shire. So we've got 34 years worth. That's no real telling you anything either. Other large authorities are facing the same problems as acquiring suitable ground. Fife's in the same situation as us. Large inner cities are looking at the reuse of existing cemeteries where land is restricted, like say London, Manchester, etc., Liverpool. But that's not even on the table with Perth and Kinross at the moment. We just need to exhaust the options that's available to us. And given what the amount of land that's available in Perth and Kinross, you would think it wouldn't be a problem, but unfortunately it is. As I say, looking at capacity for the whole of Perth and Kinross, and some of the delays due to staff shortages and illness and stuff like that, but there's a solid group of people now working on it, so hopefully we can take things forward. There's also the option of engaging consultants in the future, but that again, that's costly and we'd have to go to senior managers before we can do that. But we'll have got a lot of maps and ground and tabletop work done already, so if I didn't want to lose that. It's a lot of good information that's been put together there.
That was fantastic, Willie. Thank you very much. Do people have questions?
One very quick question.
I thought we would, yes.
Just a quick question. Thanks again, Roy. Last year when we spoke about this initially, you updated us and let us know that it was an ongoing piece of work, and that I queried if it was ongoing about contacting people who had bought layers a number of years ago and had no intention of using them because of the changing circumstances. Has that managed to release any layers for you?
Yes, but not a great deal, probably 7 or 8, but that's normal. We're doing a big search at Jeanfield Cemetery, which is a lot larger than any around here, and we run that for about 4 years, and we didn't even get 20 people coming forward. It's we'll probably do another push on that very soon, right across Perth and Kinross, because there is a lot of layers sitting empty right across the estate. And if we can get people to come forward on that, there is a bit of Scottish Government legislation now that allows us to approach these people. And if we can't get them, put signage up, display that for a year, and then if nobody comes forward, we can claim that back. 75, but that's, I mean, that's a long process, and there is a number of.
Thank you. Thanks, Roy.
No problem.
Thank you.
Richard was next.
Just really, last time you came as well, you gave an update on the existing Kinross Cemetery at Broom Road, Sunny Park, and you said there was a plan at that point to extend that. Is that being shelved? Is that not happening?
No, Broom Road was extended.
There was a phase 2 which went across into the green space area across the road as well, was there not, from memory?
Yes, when we done test digs in there, we found a lot of buried asbestos, particularly on the left-hand side, along the side of the road. Yes. There was a lot of debris, let's say, buried in the ground, so we basically just halted that, and that we do find that quite a lot in a number of sites. And basically we didn't want to be disturbing it and causing any more. It's been registered on our maps and that there was the fear of asbestos discovered on that.
Are there any other questions?
Sorry, Willie Robertson, that field at Portmoak is where Scotland Well community are looking at putting a path. Yeah. So that's a big point. It's a good point to maybe just consider the things in that opportunity.
Yes, and that would be included in if we were successful in acquiring that ground and getting that. And it's the same with the car parking facilities that's available there at the moment. I know that we had a bit of problem with the house being sold at Portmoak, or the church being sold. So that would obviously incorporate that as well. There'd be adequate car parking built around the new cemetery, etc. So that might alleviate that. I'm sorry to bring this up as well, but has there anything happened in the community concerning the car park at Portmoak? Has that been discussed any further?
I think it's just about resolved, Willie. I've not had an update, but I was told that the come to an agreement. But I'll try and find out.
Yes, that was.
No, I've been keeping you informed. I'm trying to keep you informed of what's been happening.
Yes. I'd appreciate that, because I think what we would do as Bereavement Services and the council is we would kind of put the boundary fencing up. If there's going to be a definition between them and us, I mean, we would take take some ownership on that and put some fencing and that up, and that would be done through bereavement services budget. So if I could be kept in the loop on that, quite happy to put that forward.
I'll try and find out what the situation is tomorrow and get back to you.
Right, thank you, that's much appreciated.
Okay, are we all happy to move on? Thank you, Willie. You're
Right,
free
thank
to
you
go
very
home and
much.
get some tea now if you like.
You haven't seen my messages, have you?
Not recently, no.
Thank you very much.
Okay, the next item is the Community Investment Fund. I don't know if you want to make a presentation, or are we just all happy to homologate the report into the?
If you want to do it that way, that's absolutely fine.
I know you've been sitting all night waiting to speak, but are we all happy to do that?
Yep.
Here's the time and yeah. Okay, the final thing is the committee development session. There was to be one, which we postponed because of staff problems. Do we want to do a development session? Possibly in the new year, start of the new year. Really sort of looking at where we want to go as a committee and what we want to do. Is all about working. Is it something you would like me to organise and then send out dates for people, or do you think there's enough happening already? Happy with the thing?
Could I suggest that with the minute when it was out, or we could actually contact all the members of the committee and ask them to put that, and we could put this in agenda for our meeting in January and discuss it, what if they feel they need to explore it further.
Happy with that? Are you happy with that, Kirsten? Did you get that?
Yeah, that's no worries.
You're still there then, that's good.
Just checking.
Just checking. Right, anyway, I think that's it, unless anyone's got anything else they want to raise. Okay, I just want to thank Magda, Kirsten, Audrey and Lee for staying here till this late at night. Thank you for coming, guys. That's it then.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you very much. Hey.